do you know all this? What are you, some kind of real estate agent?
Oh, he's a realtor. There is a difference somehow.
Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
You know, John, I am a lover of Mondays for a number of different reasons. You know what one of them is?
What's that?
Because I don't have to go through the weekend withdrawal of not having a show with you on the air, John.
Oh, start, Brad. David Lee III, Brad, the gentleman who lost his life at the hands of an allegedly drunk, alleged illegal alien. Memorial service on Saturday, Brad, and a parade, a funeral procession, I guess I should say, in downtown St. Louis in North City to honor the life of St. Louis police officer David Lee III. So the Post-Dispatch had extensive coverage of it, Brad. I had links up to it on Sunday morning, on yesterday morning on my website. And again, a real tragedy, the loss of a St. Louis police officer. We should point out that the alleged drunk driver, who was an illegal immigrant, has pleaded not guilty to these charges, Brad. And I would also point out that in the Post-Dispatch piece, which was written by a gentleman named Jess Bogan, has pointed to the fact that this gentleman was indeed an illegal alien. And Jess Bogan sentences, quote, conservative lawmakers have seized on the incident as the result of soft border enforcement policies. So once again, Brad, conservative lawmakers seizing on a tragedy, Brad, for political gain. Isn't that despicable?
What I find sad about it is lawmakers in general should be seizing on this opportunity, don't you think? I mean,
yeah, not just conservatives.
Exactly.
And I think it would be unfair to point out that it's just conservatives. And, you know, Brad, we cite, for example, Jane Duker quite a bit, a frequent host on Mark Reardon's Roundtable on Friday, and prominent Democrat activist, attorney, consultant, has pointed out how ridiculous it is that this gentleman, after his brushes with the law, was allowed to remain in this country.
And there's some, and tell me if I'm right or wrong on this. I've heard this sort of from some unreliable sources, but there's some finger pointing going on at St. Charles County because he was essentially bailed out of jail in St. Charles County for another violation. Wasn't that the case or something like that?
Yeah, I believe that's true. And I believe I remember hearing that from Nick Schroer when Nick Schroer was on Scott Fawn's show that there was essentially, you're right, Brad, a little bit of question of whose ultimate responsibility was it.
Right. And why was he out in the streets? Because he already been arrested. And I believe the arrest was, if I'm not mistaken, for a felony arrest. And the ICE people should have been called in and he should have been nabbed and deported, which would have been for the second time, because I believe also he was already deported once. Isn't that the case?
Yeah, you're exactly right there, Brad. So a sad story. I mean, it was nice to see all the officers coming together on Saturday morning, but a really sad moment for the community.
Well, anytime and especially when you have something that's so senseless, like a traffic accident where the officer was trying to assist on, I believe, a stalled car out in I-70, and this guy just comes and mows him down. It just, God, it's, and me, I've said this before. I'm a anti drunk driving guy. And the interesting thing about this is, once again, John, who's never called 911, I probably have called 911 dozens of times when I've been behind drunk drivers. And, once upon a time, way back when, I actually got a certificate, a commendation letter from the city of Florissant because I nabbed a guy who was drunk driving who, as I'm behind him, he veers off right on New Florissant Road, just north of 270, veers off the roadway, and there are three girls. The picture is still clear in my mind. It's one of those snapshots in my mind where he veers off the roadway, crosses over like a grassy area in front of somebody's house, and almost hits these three young girls walking down the sidewalk in Florissant. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm sticking with this guy. I'm nailing this guy. And I stayed right behind him, gave the dispatcher, continual information. About a mile north of 270, a Florissant police officer was standing outside of his car. Another officer was partially blocking the roadway, his lights on. They moved the guy over into a parking lot, and the guy could barely walk. I mean, he was so drunk.
Yikes.
It was crazy, but that's just, Once again, not trying to pat myself on the shoulder, but John Combest, the man who has never placed a 911 call in his life, John, there's some people that say you lead a pretty boring life if that's the case. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm pretty much just eating pablum over here and taking naps and not doing much. But you know who is doing a lot, Brad? The subjects of story number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
A pair of dueling endorsements over the weekend. We learned from Tony's Kansas City over the weekend, Brad, that Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker has endorsed his friend Josh Hawley for the U.S. Senate. Also, yesterday, the Kansas City Star endorsed Josh Hawley's opponent, a guy named Lucas Kunce, who's filling the ballot slot and taking the Democrats' loss this year. The Democrats endorsed Lucas Kunce, so we have a pair of dueling endorsements. I noted yesterday, Brad, for historical sake and for the benefit of readers to my website, I linked to the previous endorsements from the Kansas City Star when they endorsed Senator Rudy Valentine, who, got elected in a landslide in 2022. And they also endorsed Claire McCaskill, who beat Josh Hawley in a landslide in 2018. So the Star has a strong record of supporting winning candidates in Missouri campaigns. And it's all, Brad, it's all kabuki. It's all for show. But the Star endorsed Lucas Kunce, but they can't stand Josh Hawley. They've been I think they're the harshest critics of Josh Hawley in the state. And, not surprising, but it is cool to see Harrison Butker. Brad, you often kvetch about the fact that no celebrities or famous people are endorsing Republicans or standing up for conservatives. So this is one exception, He's a kicker for the Chiefs, which is not the same as, some big movie star, but it's cool to see a conservative take a stand publicly.
And interesting on this is also, this is probably old news to you. I know you had it on the August, back in August, and I heard it over the weekend again. The confrontation between Josh Hawley and Lucas Kunce at the state fair. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and in fact, I linked to the audio where we talked about that. I linked to that again today, Brad.
I heard. Oh, you got it up again today?
I do, because I talked a little bit about the fact that, despite the fact that Lucas Kunce will lose by double digits, people shouldn't shed any tears for him. He's got a great future ahead of him.
If I'm not mistaken, the reason I heard the audio, I think I heard it Friday. I heard it. What was it, Friday night, when it was Jason Rosenbaum, who's the brother of Stewie and Scott, that he had him on his show. Wasn't that on Friday?
And if you go to my website today, Brad, I have a link to Jason Rosenbaum's Politically Speaking Hour on St. Louis Public Radio, where he talks to Lucas Kunce.
When we get into the second segment, I have a question for you about Jason Rosenbaum, because I know you know him fairly well, correct?
Yeah. I think I don't think he would be uncomfortable with me saying that I know him.
No. He made a comment on his show on Friday, which I thought was interesting, because I thought to myself, huh? And I thought to myself, John might know the answer for this.
Oh, that's a teaser. And you know what? Jason Rosenbaum is, in fact, the subject of story number 1 today, Brad.
Here we go.
The number 1.
The aforementioned Jason Rosenbaum has a column up today. He writes an occasional column. And this piece is about union members in the state of Missouri and the attempt of Republicans to get not only union vote, but occasionally union endorsements. And Brad, Jason talks about some of the issues that we've talked about, both on the national level of, national candidates like Josh Hawley appealing to unions, and also statewide candidates like Mike Kehoe seeking endorsements and votes. So it's a really good overview from Jason, a really balanced overview of, on one side, you have some conservative union members who are pro-Trump, who bang the drum for Trump publicly. And then you have folks who say, look, the only thing that really matters in Missouri is where you are on right to work. And Josh Hawley has evolved his position on right to work. Now he opposes right to work. And Rosenbaum pointed out that now Democrats in Missouri are often willing to, the groups themselves are willing to back Republicans as long as the Republicans are seen as being pro-labor. So it's a really pragmatic approach from some of these union groups.
Well, it's interesting because we now have two major unions that have not endorsed anybody, which is sort of interesting because normally the unions always endorse the Democratic candidates for president, but two unions, big unions, have come out and said, we're not going to endorse anybody this year, which is sort of interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And, and that was IAFF over the weekend, I believe, right? International Association of Firefighters. I believe that was over the weekend.
Right, and it was the other one is, I believe, the Teamsters. The Teamsters came out and said.
Yeah, so Jason has a really good overview there of the way that breaks down in Missouri. And, you have a lot of conservative, pro-gun, even pro-life union members who just want to be able to work and be a member of their union, and they just don't want Republicans messing with their union, But,
the sad thing for me on this is there's so much, the idea that there has to be this monolithic thing, that if you're a union member, you're a Democrat, and if you're not a union member, you're Republican. You know what I mean? It's to the point where it's like, okay, that's just like, saying everybody that wears blue jeans is a hipster and everybody that wears Dockers is a corporate climber. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's
I get exactly what you're saying. And let's not forget that you look at if you were to poll union members and ask them if they'll vote Republican, that type of poll will undercount Republican votes, be what's known as the shy Tory effect, which comes from England. The idea of people might not admit to voting for Republicans or might not admit to voting for Donald Trump if somebody shoves a microphone or a survey thing in their face. But, in the privacy of the voting booth, they're going to vote for Donald Trump. They're going to vote for Republicans.
Oh, hold on a minute. Shy Tory, is that two words or one word?
It's two words. Tory being the Conservative Party in England.
That's what I thought. So in other words, a shy Tory is a Tory who is not necessarily admitting they're a Tory?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you look back to the days of Margaret Thatcher or even John Major, folks would be polled like in person in Great Britain, and somebody'd come up to them and ask who they're voting for. They're like, oh, yes, I'm voting for the Labour Party. Of course. I'm for the working man, of course. And those type of polls consistently undercounted Tory votes or conservative votes.
John is a font of information. I'm telling you.
Yeah, the shy Tory syndrome, Brett.
I've never heard that before. That's a new one on me. Okay. I thought the way John is, it might be something he read on the old Playboy Advisor or something like that. Anyway.
Oh, is Tory a woman I should know?
I know several Tories.
I bet you do, Brad.
I do.
And guess what? They're all on stage number 3, and they're wearing clear heels.
No, that's not what's that website where you go in and it gives you your hooker name? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
Oh, there's a website. If you go in and you put in your name, your real name, it gives you what your hooker name is.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you didn't know that. Okay. See where I hang out? John talks about shy Tories, and Brad talks about websites where you can find out what your hooker name is. Okay, we have to take a break. First off, next segment, Jason Rosenbaum, and I'll ask my question to you. And by the way,
love it.
I found his picture and I put it up on my Facebook page, and lots of people have commented on it. But you know what the problem is?
What's that?
I'm in the Boca. Now I'll throw one at you. Boca, B-O-K-E-H. You know what Boca is?
How do you spell that?
B-O-K-E-H.
No, does that mean background?
Well, I'll explain it next break, okay?
Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T. John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?